Jake Cronenworth and Ha-Seong Kim could be on the block as the Padres are looking to get a DH first base kind of type, but they want that guy to be able to play first base. They don't really believe in having an everyday DH. At least that's what it seems like. So the idea is you would bring in a power bat, bring back a guy like Brandon Drury, or have Will Myers kind of platoon with Joey Gallo, as we were talking a little bit about, and something like that at first base, and then you would move either Ha-Seong Kim or Jake Cronenworth, and basically the idea is that you could upgrade in the starting pitching department. So let's talk about the two guys that could potentially be leaving on the Padres side. I find this very, very interesting just to see like kind of how it would look like. But let's talk about Ha-Seong Kim, because Ha-Seong Kim is a guy that we have all grown to love as Padre fans, and he only has 1 year left on his deal. He makes $7 million. He's easily worth that. He improved a lot this past season, but there's a big question mark now of, is he going to be back in a Padre uniform not only next year, not next year, but the season after? So, in my opinion, it almost becomes a kind of a crossroad where it's like, do you want to trade this guy or do you want to extend him? Which extending him would be a little weird now because you have Bogarts, you have Jackson Merrill coming up, you have Jake Cronenworth controlled. So, do you think it makes sense for the Padres to trade away Ha-Seong Kim? Not only do you think it makes sense, do you like the idea of them doing that?
It makes sense, but I don't like it. I mean, we all know that the fan base loves Ha-Seong Kim. The clubhouse absolutely loves him too. Whenever Ha-Seong Kim does good, the entire team does good. I mean, Manny learned Korean just so he can talk, like say phrases to Ha-Seong Kim. I mean, if that doesn't say something about his character and his presence in the clubhouse, I don't know what does. I mean, that's the biggest example you can think of. Every time he's up to bat, you hear the crowd. It is just an echo of Ha-Seong Kim over and over and over again. It makes sense, though. I mean, you have Xander Bogaerts signed for the next 11 years. You have Tatis signed for the next 12 years, I believe. Where are you going to put Tatis? Is he going to be considered an outfielder for the rest of the time? Is he just going to be there while Bogaerts is in his prime and can play short? And then when Bogaerts gets over, does he slide over to second? Do you have Bogaerts at second and Tatis at short right now? And that's what you do. And you move Jake over to first. But if they go, hey, Tatis, guess what? You're going to be a center fielder now. We're going to upgrade our right field. Grisham, you're gone. Sorry, unfortunate. We're going to use you as trade bait to get another arm. I'm fine with that. A lot of teams are high on Trent Grisham. Who said, we're not talking about trading Tatis. I was really freaked out for a second. No. Tatis is probably going to get moved to the outfield, the center field, trade Grisham. He's got a lot of upside. And then you go and sign another guy. You either use him to trade for a pitcher or trade for a power bat, and then you go sign another pitcher or so. Absolutely. I do think Jake probably has a bigger market. He's on a cheaper contract. He's got a couple more years of control. He can play second base, Gold Glove second base. He can play Gold Glove first base. He's not necessarily your archetype of a first baseman in the power department, but he'll still get you between 10 and 20 home runs in a year, depending on if he can figure it out at the plate. I know he had a little bit more struggles last year, but I don't want to get rid of Ha-Seong Kim. I like Ha-Seong Kim. $7 million is a steal. He put up a 4 WAR last year. He's only gotten better each year. And in the time of you're trying to win a World Series, I think you need one of those guys that he can be an X factor, and he absolutely can be. He's an X factor on defense. And if he comes around with the bat to even a slightly above average hitter, he can easily put up a 5 WAR season, and that would be huge on the Padres. I mean, having Jake at first base playing Gold Glove defense, having Kim at second with a 750 OPS would be absolutely insane with his glove. And then Xander and Machado, you got Tatis in the outfield, you have Juan Soto, and the only real hole is, okay, who's going to be our right fielder? Which, if you wanted to, I saw floating around on Twitter. I don't know how many of you guys are going to be fans of this. It was basically, they called it the Los Gallos situation, and you'd have Myers and Gallo platooning right field, and Myers would hit against lefties, and then Gallo would hit against righties. And last year they had a 804 OPS each against Gallo versus righties, Myers versus lefties, which 804 is pretty solid platoon for right field. Both of them, well, Gallo doesn't know right field and Pecco, but Myers has had experience there. Neither of them would be everyday players, or if they were, one would be DHing, one would be playing right field, and then worst case scenario, they can also platoon at first, which gives you a lot of flexibility with your lineup.
Yeah, and we're looking into trading potentially Kim or Cronenworth, and it's kind of like, dude, those are like the two fan favorites. Like, you don't want to trade either of those guys. And when Xander Bogaerts was signed, the idea was, okay, Xander Bogaerts is getting signed to play short, Kim's going to play second, and Jake's going to slide to first. But now we've kind of seen, like, if they do go after a first base type, they don't really want him to DH. So I really wonder what that's going to look like. I like your idea, like your hypothetical more of you're going to move Tatis to the outfield, you're going to trade Grisham. Whatever they do, though, my thought at least, I don't think they're going to rush to do it. I don't think we're going to see them make one of these trades. Like, I think that they will go and sign a guy. Like, say they want to bring back Brandon Drury, right? But they want him to be their first baseman. They don't really know how they're going to move Cronenworth and Kim around or people in the outfield, right? Like, they're not really sure. I think they might sign Brandon Drury and then wait to trade one of Cronenworth or Kim until either spring training, until Tatis is back, until the deadline, something like that. But also, if you do that, then on Kim's side, you're losing a ton of value because Kim is going to have half a year by the time the deadline rolls around. So all of a sudden, you lose a lot of value in terms of trading him. I don't want them to trade either. I think it makes a lot more sense because, the Padres need to go get starters, at least one, preferably two. And they have to have a lefty, and there's Seth Lugo and Wade Miley are like the only guys available outside of Carlos Rodon, but it doesn't seem like Rodon's really in play. So I say you keep it kind of how it is. You bring in Brandon Drury, and then you see how it plays out. And you see who becomes expendable once Tatis is back, once Drury's there, once Cronenworth is at first. And you kind of see how that whole situation plays out. And maybe Drury DH a little bit. And the cool thing about Drury is Drury could be a DH, but he could also be a utility player as well at the same time. Where a lot of guys that get signed to play DH or get signed to be the DH, they're exclusively DHs and they don't do anything else. And it's like you can throw them at first, but like you don't want to. Or it's like you can throw him in a corner outfield spot, but you don't want to. Well, Drury can play basically second, first. He's played third a little bit, let Manny rest and get some DH days. I think that makes sense. And I don't think we have to take it as like if the Padres go and sign a DH, like a guy to be their DH, that he also has to play on the field every day. Like they can't have a guy that's like technically your DH. Because to start the year, you're not gonna have Tatis. So there's also that element of it as well. So I don't know what's going to happen. It's definitely an interesting one. You bring up the kind of Myers-Gallo thing. I feel like no one really wants to see that. But like you look at numbers wise and you're like, all right, like that's okay. Like that is going to work out, especially for a platoon thing. I just don't think the Padres really have to do that yet. I think they can wait a little bit. And I think they would probably prefer to have Drury, where you could also have Drury and Myers, or you could have Drury and Gallo or something like that. So they'll probably sign one of Myers or Gallo to be like a bench piece or a different guy to be a bench piece. But I don't think you have to trade Cronenworth or Kim. With that said, though, Chase, if you have to trade one, say that that's their ideas, you have to have Drury play first base. He's going to be your everyday first baseman, and you have to trade one of them. Would you rather keep Ha-Seong Kim or keep Jake Cronenworth?
I think you have to keep Cronenworth just because Kim is going to be a free agent. He's going to demand some money. Jake Cronenworth, you had a couple more years of control. He has a little bit more flexibility. He's going to be one of the few lefty bats in the lineups outside of Soto. You kind of have to keep him. We have a plethora of righties. Cronenworth can also brings the same defensive prowess. If not, he has a little bit better of a bat. And he's a lefty, and he's going to be cheaper. So I think you got to keep Cronenworth. As much as I don't want to get rid of Kim, you'd have to keep Cronenworth, which if you're in a position where you have to trade either of them, I don't think you are. You have plenty of options. You just need a couple pitchers and you're solid. If If you want to run it back with Grisham, you can run it back with Grisham, but you don't have to. You have guys that are cheaper options that you can take a gamble on. Like you can sign Myers and Gallo to probably like 10 million a year each, and you'll probably get 30 home runs out of both of them combined, if not a little bit more. Gallo hit 19 home runs last year, and that was a down year. He's going to be playing in Petco, where he'll get shortened up a little bit. I think he's a good fit for a right field. I think he's great for a platoon guy. Hey, you're going to face all the righties. You're not going to face any lefties. We're just going to focus on putting you at your best and where you're going to succeed at. And Myers, we're going to do the same. You're going to hit against lefties. Gallo, you're going to hit against righties strictly. I think you get them on a deal. They'll provide you with 30, 40 home runs combined from the DH and right field position. And I think that's all you need. That's basically all the power the Padres needed. And you get them hot during the playoffs. That's an unstoppable duo.
And that's always the question with Myers and Joey Gallo, of course, is the streakiness, which also plays in a role of like you could platoon him. You also have Azocar off the bench as an outfield option. And currently you have Trent Grisham and Tatis as outfield options as well. So like you have a plethora of guys that you can put right there and kind of wait for Tatis to come back and see how it plays out. But I do really hope that the kind of rumors that we've seen about potentially trading away Jake Cronenworth and Ha-Seong Kim do not come to fruition. I think that if you trade Ha-Seong Kim, it would feel like such a gut punch. I personally think Ha-Seong Kim is one of those guys that is like, you probably just extend him and maybe you end up trading him later or whatever, but I think you want to extend him because I think next year's we should expect that to be his best year in the bigs so far. Like you would expect that, right? Because it's the third year for KBO players. It's always like not always, but pretty consistently. It's like year one, it takes them, they struggle quite a bit. And then year two, they start making some adjustments. And then year three is where it's like, okay, that's who they're going to be. That's typically how a lot of guys have played after they've played, their whole lives in the KBO because they kind of got to adjust to that velocity. We've already seen, last year Kim looked a lot more comfortable with high velocity at the plate because his rookie year, he looked bad. Like, he did some other things great, but he could not hit high velocity fastballs whatsoever. So I have a lot of faith in him to continue to play better. So I would actually rather you extend him with Jake. You have 4 more years of control with Jake. I don't think it makes any sense at all to trade him unless someone really views him as like, okay, yeah, give us Jake Cronenworth and, we'll give you an ace back as like, Jake Cronenworth is like the main piece in that deal. That's the only way I could see that happening. And even then, I feel like the Padres might be a little bit reluctant to do something like that. Though it does make a little bit of sense if you did trade him for like an ace with, control or something like that. But I don't know. I just don't want to see it happen. And I feel like you feel the same way, right? You're muted.
Yeah, I've talked about it the whole time. It'd be like trading away Franmil Reyes again, where he was the crowd favorite. Everybody in the dughouse loved him. And then as soon as he left, they were like a hole in the dugout. They weren't as energized. They didn't look like they were having as much fun playing baseball. Sometimes you just need one of those guys that's a really good clubhouse guy that everybody gathers around and gets electrified by when they do good. And Ha-Seong Kim is that person. Yes, Tatis is that person too. However, he's also going to be missing, I've heard, is it 20 games? I've seen as low as 12. I've seen as high as like 23, 24 games.
I think it's 20-something.
20-something? All right. Which he is too, but more people and the fans gather around Ha-Seong Kim than Tatis right now just because of what happened last year. Everybody loves Tatis, but everyone's going to hold some frustration towards him because of the motorcycle accidents, because of the PEDs. He's going to get trashed upon across the league at different ballparks, getting booed and stuff. So you're going to need one of those guys that is a little ray of sunshine in Ha-Seong Kim. So I don't want to get rid of him. It doesn't make sense this year.